Welcome back to the continuing story of the Perfume Nationalist. I'm extremely excited to welcome back probably the most beloved and popular guest we have ever had, NeedsSalt, the angel-wearing frog from the Tales of Uncle Remus. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of very racy and different and exciting animated movies from different time periods. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Coal Black and the Sebben Dwarfs, Song of the South, and Ralph Bakshi's Heavy Traffic. How are you doing, NeedsSalt?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. I just put on some Vict to compare to Tubereuse Criminelle, and my mind is a little blown, but I'm jumping ahead.
Can't wait to hear about that.
Doesn't it feel like about 5 million years ago that we recorded the Gone with the Wind episode? That was only like, what, 9 months ago?
Mm-hmm.
That was a million years ago.
Yeah.
Well, think of all that's happened since then, because that was before the events of January 6th. That was before the COVID plot line was drawn to its strange temporary maybe conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
What's been going on with you in that time?
Nothing much. Just living. My life's pretty boring. So, it's like nothing really changed for me because I didn't really change anything for myself during that whole time. I mean, I'm a quote unquote essential worker. So, I just went to work and did my job, and, nothing ever changed in my life really, except my kids were home from school, and then they went back to school, and literally nothing was different than it was before.
Right. And I finally can officially not wear the mask at work as of last week. Yeah. And, before that, I was not wearing it for, like, breaking the rules for about a month and a half. And the transformation and the perception of me from people is just incredible to witness. Everybody is so nice to me. Everybody is, like, interested in me. Everybody says how cute I am. All they could see before was, like, my mean looking eyes. Like, people are scared of me. I have to constantly smile in order to put them at ease. And even when I smile, sometimes they think that I'm making fun of them. But, like, as a man, it's just like cutting off, like Samson and Delilah, like cutting off the hair, like putting a mask over your face. Like, people don't respect you. It just was so cruel the entire year.
Yeah. Big men, especially big men, like my hubs is a big man, and he's just got he's the kindest person, and he's very gentle, but he just has a face that, people can be kind of leery of him because he's a big guy.
And he could just kill them at any time.
I mean, and when all you can see is someone's eyes and you can't read the rest of their face, and there's so much that goes on there, and it's really sick what they did to people. It's so sick.
It made everyone hate everyone else. It just ruined human communications. You couldn't tell jokes, make small talk. Like, there's no way to indicate that what you're saying is funny. You couldn't have any kind of, like, honest conversation about anything. And, I have to really thank you, because I was in the depths of it, of despair about it when we recorded the Gone with the Wind episode last November. And you said that there are places where people are not that crazy.
Right. It's true, and I mean, like, even old people around here, there were so many old people that were just like, I'm not doing that. That's not right. People can't hear you. They had all these complaints about the masks, and they just weren't going to do it. And they hated it because they couldn't go to church. That's a kind of a big deal here for the older folks. and keeping people away from their church where they socialize and that's where they see people. It was so cruel. And so as soon as they could, they were back. You know,
it was the most traumatic thing that's happened to me in my entire life, and I've like almost died several times. And that year of being forced by all of society and everyone around to put that on my face and just make my entire life miserable and cripple all of my social interactions was the most psychologically damaging thing that's ever happened to me. And for people to like write that off as like, oh, it's not a big deal. And then of course the like blue check journalist class like wants it to continue.
There wasn't a lockdown.
Now they say there wasn't a lockdown. Nothing.
It's funny that you mentioned NeedsSalt old folks, because so many of like the crimes against humanity seem uniquely directed at old folks.
Yes.
Like the lockdown of old folks' homes, basically putting people in solitary confinement, preventing people from going to church. Old folks tend to still believe in television, and their minds are uniquely beaten to a bloody pulp with a meat cleaver after the last year. Like so much of it seems...
It's so ugly. It's so ugly. And people I know, they were like, I just turn it off. I just had to turn it off. And they did. They turned it off and they went into their garden, or they turned it off and they went and did something else. But I mean, people around here, they still went and saw their families and stuff. I don't know a whole lot of people that were like, we're just not going to see our family. That just didn't happen here.
Even liberals were traveling the entire time. Yeah. I saw them. They were traveling the entire time and they were like mildly inconvenienced, but then they go online where all of COVID is happening, basically online, and they would, put their voices forward whenever there was the moral panic about Christmas or Thanksgiving, saying that holidays were white supremacy and needed to be done away with.
just anything to call it white supremacy and completely destroy any kind of tradition we have in this country.
That was the most demonic part of all of it, was the war on Christmas, like the real war on Christmas. Like, the war on Christmas is real, of course, of the last 20 years, but like the doubling down, going from Christmas is bad just because it's a Christian holiday, and going from there to seeing family is bad, placing any value on family is bad, gathering together in this way is literally harming people, literally destroying the earth. That was the most demonic thing that I've witnessed in my entire life play out in front of me.
Yes. I 100% agree. There's nothing about that that's not absolutely wicked and evil. It's anti-human.
And the persecuting of old people during all of this, that's kind of a theme that runs through all of these movies, which are in different ways considered to be antiquated and, except for Snow White, really worthy of like disposal and no one needs to see them ever again. Well, they were happy things that brought so much innocent joy to so many people, that were just like a cultural institution for decades and decades. And now post 2010s, there's just the liberal Stalinist impulse to erase everything in the name of social engineering, and it's really erasing all of the memories of everyone who's getting older as well.
But they were wrong, so it's okay.
Yeah, the constantly changing definition of wrong, constantly being fed new programming. Being a liberal is all about receiving the latest software update, just like you get the software update notifications on your iPhone. You have to constantly be updated, or you will be mocked and ridiculed and exiled from society if you didn't receive the latest update. None of it makes any sense either, but you have to keep up. You have to keep constantly on your toes. But anyway, what's been going on in your perfume world? You've been buying a lot of stuff over the last few months. You've been bad.
I've been really bad. I've bought way too much, but I'm kind of like you. I'm like, just go for it. Because I don't know I don't know what's going to come down the pipe in the next few months, you know? Just go for it.
I was just wondering that because you know how you always have to have like something you're like obsessed with, like, oh, I need to buy this. And just like this morning, I'm like, well, is it time to just like spend some money since like the world's gonna end, you know, in the next few months?
Yeah, everything's gonna crash and get gutted out. So why not just, you know, spend it? Yeah.
So yeah, y'all endorse me spending the money. That's the right thing, the smart thing to do, right?
It is though. Yeah. People who spend money are happier. Like one of the most valuable things anyone ever told me was like my favorite college professor who was like an ex-country music radio host, and she was like a really salty Southern lady. She told me that money is a renewable resource, so like do whatever you want with it. And it's true. I mean, you can either be like a spendthrift and bitterly sit on all of your money and not enjoy anything and just live life in this extremely practical manner, or you can enjoy it. You know, there's always the process of tempering that. But I think we're definitely a family of people who enjoy spending money.
Yeah. You can hold on to it and sit on top of it forever. You can buy a bottle of Sycamore and really enjoy that, which I have been.
Isn't it so beautiful?
It is so beautiful. I love it so much.
I had the most amazing, like the way that I ended up buying that was so magical and like old fashioned. The friend of the pod, Sam Dennis, sent me a Christmas card and it was scented with sycamore. And I had never thought about sycamore. I just thought it was like one of those like kind of modern masculines that I might not really care about. And I just kept smelling that card, and it was the most wonderful, like lush marijuana vetiver thing I'd ever smelled. And it smelled for like 2 months, and I ordered the large bottle.
Yep.
Sight unseen.
Get that big one. Yeah. It's so beautiful.
You have to order the big one of those Chanel exclusives. It's brilliant marketing on Chanel's part, okay, because as we've talked about, those little, the like $200 smaller bottles that seem more affordable, they're like the only badly designed Chanel bottles in history. They just look like these little icicles. They're so measly. And Chanel is the master of the purse spray. Chanel has always put out the most beautiful, masterfully executed purse sprays and travel sprays, where they're really like fascistically obsessed with the sound of the click of the cap. Like Chanel caps have a specific click,
which is important.
Yes,
because like the cheap cap on, I know it's a cheap perfume, but like even like a 5% better cap on Elizabeth Taylor Passions would take the experience of owning it. Like you would gain more than like even just a slightly better cap. Anyway,
no, it's true.
The caps for purse sprays and stuff like that used to be so much more comforting. Like one time Joan Van Ark was sprayed on a perfume on an episode of Knots Landing, and I recognized the Chanel cap click. And the Estee Lauder cap click that's on like Alliage and Private Collection and the old Cinnabar, that has a specific click. But yeah, you got Sycamore. What else have you got?
I got a vintage bottle of Private Collection, speaking of. I got a giant bottle of the Agent Provocateur because I love that. And I have the Diamond Dust, but I wanted that big 6 ounce bottle. And it's
the pink
huge.
Breast Grenade.
Yes. Oh gosh, I love those bottles. They're so beautiful. And I just love holding it. It's one of those things you just love holding it in your hand. And I wish like more men would get into that line and just like get themselves a bottle of that,
totally.
Because it's so pleasing.
That's such an underrated line. They're all really strong and really good and really cheap. and really interesting, especially the original. And the original was very forward thinking because it came out in like 2000, but it was like a musky kind of rose oud without the oud before oud became a thing. And it was also like a retro rose chypre. So it was just very outside of time.
It's really great. There's something about it that kind of reminds me, and this is, I mean, I know people that are into fragrance will, you know, kind of get this more, but it reminds me of like ashtrays and like roses and just like a dark club. And there's something about it that's very kind of mysterious to me. And it's one of the first things that I really got my nose around, that I was like, you know, this is really different and good. And I can see where, you know, something that might be slightly unpleasant to some people is just not really unpleasant. It's really, just beautiful and different and mysterious. And I just think it would smell really good on men. And I wish more men would wear it.
Yeah, it's so musky, so extremely musky. It's like you dumped an entire bottle of like New Orleans head shop musk oil into a rose chypre. And it has that like kind of vinegar sourness that's like the trademark of the rose chypre to me. That I think is what people interpret as like the dirty panties, you know, the shocking element that you see in all the like Fragrantica reviews of it. Yeah.
Those any kind of Fragrantica review, they're just always so nasty. This is so shocking. And so, and I mean, I get it. Yeah, some things are kind of shocking. You don't expect to kind of run across that stuff. And most people don't, I suppose. Obviously, nothing phases me. But, you know, there's some things they'll just be like, it's so dirty. And then you get your nose on it and you're like, this is not dirty at all. What are you people even talking about? Like, even the thing we're talking about today, there are people that are like, it's kind of dirty. And I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah, the exaggeration is the trope that bothers me the most in the perfume reviews, where everything is either it made me vomit and made my throat close up, you know, or it's so animalic that it smells like human shit. And it's like nothing is that animalic. No. Like no. Short of like real oud, which even then it doesn't smell just like shit or something bad. Like all perfume smells good. That's its sole purpose. It's to smell good, you know.
Probably the only thing I own that's like really out. Well, I have two things. I have the Al Rehab oud that, you know, has come across the timeline several times.
I still need to get that.
That really does have like a dog poop flavor to it. It really does.
I got told I smelled like Downy dryer sheets when I wore that.
That's funny because
it has some like musk in it or something that a non-perfume initiated person interpreted as dryer sheets.
Yeah. That's weird because I love it, and normally Downy dryer sheets are not something I love. But anyway, but I mean, obviously that's not the only facet. But yeah, if you get it on your clothes, especially, it hangs out on your like sleeves, and it's like every once in a while you'll just get this whiff, and you're like, you feel like you stepped in something. And then the other thing is the CB I Hate Perfumes musk reinvention, and that it really does. I won't wear it out in public because I feel like
I was looking at that line finally because Petra Courtright was talking about it last week, and and they looked really interesting. There was one called Angelic Conversation, like named after the Derek Jarman movie, and yeah, I'm gonna order some musk reinvention at some point.
Yeah, I don't. This is like a decant from an older bottle. I don't know what it smells like now, but this stuff it's weird. It's not weird. It's like it makes me feel weird because it's so overtly. So overtly. There's something about it that's very, very vaginal and. It's it just is. So, but it's something else. And yeah, I can't wear it in public because it makes me uncomfortable, but I love it around the house, but I can't wear it in public.
Yeah. The Al Rehab oud scares me as well. It's $30 and it's in the most like frightening, Castle of Mordor bottle That seems out there even for like Middle Eastern cheap oud gaudy bottles with these like piss colored yellow plastic jewels on it.
I love the plastic jewels.
Yeah, it looks like a fortress door.
Great.
A drawbridge. And that picture of like the orc from Lord of the Rings that you always post whenever you spray it is a perfect representation.
It is. It really is.
Yeah, it's extremely like you can see the grass stuck to the turd. Like, yeah. Tubereuse Criminelle is one of these perfumes that in the early days of perfume blogging, when Serge Lutens perfumes were like totally unavailable in the US beyond the like export spray bottle ones, this held this position of legend as like the craziest, most out there floral ever made, just really scary gothic. And I remember one of my early perfume friends was obsessed with it. She loved Tubereuse, and she made me a big decant in like 2010. And then I've talked about before how like it took me a few years to realize the brilliance of Serge Lutens, and I thought they were overrated for a while, but I am totally drink the Kool-Aid now. My main problem, and still is the how like unusable the bottles are. Like the bell jars are beautiful, but they're annoying. Like I wish it was just a bell jar with a spray. But I always meant to buy Tubereuse Criminelle, but they finally re-released it in one of these tall black Art Deco sprays. And I got one last year finally, and it's not something I wear all the time. I love the smell of Tubereuse. I love white florals. I don't wear them all the time. I will maybe wear them like once a week in the summer or something, but this is one of the most astonishing and brilliant and artistic openings in all of perfumery, I think.
And the opening is what is similar to Vict, which is strange to say because Vict like has no opening. Vict just happens. But
Vict has no evolution.
Yeah. But it just goes on. And there it is. But the opening here is what's similar to Vict. It feels like something rotting, foam rotting teeth.
Yeah, okay. Like, I think that might be like the Styrax.
Yeah, that's why I pulled out the Vict, because I looked up the notes, and Vict is like straight up Styrax.
You know, I have a little sample of Vict that I bought after you guys talked about it, and I've never smelled it yet. Out of all the slumber houses I have, little samples in the bottles, I haven't smelled Vict yet.
Ooh, I just sprayed the Tubereuse on. It's exciting every time. So it's like cold menthol wintergreen camphor freshness, such as you get quite a bit of in the opening of Angel, where it's just this ice cold galaxy of camphor mothball freshness. But Tubereuse also has notes of like bloody meat, rotting meat, rotten teeth, stuff like that.
Yeah, rubber.
The blood element I feel is really emphasized in Poison, which is the predecessor to this in terms of like avant-garde Tubereuse perfumes. I get the like bloody kind of meat thing in Poison quite a bit mixed up with the 80s grape soda.
Yeah.
This is from 1999. It's just so layered. It's I in my head I had it filed as just like wintergreen camphor, but that meaty smell is so strange.
And that really comes out as the day goes on, and especially if you get hot, you kind of get that meaty, fleshy bloody smell a little bit more. But even then, that's still beautiful because it's tempered out with like some sort of musk. There's just all these. It looks simple on paper. When you look at the notes, it looks really simple, but it's one of the more complicated things I think I've ever smelled.
And it fades into a fairly traditional floral. Like the weirdness it's like front loaded on weirdness to me.
It's very strong. It's very strong at the beginning, and it is so. It just whooshes up into your nose, that extreme fume, and it's a fume. It's not like a scent. It's a fume. It almost makes you dizzy. It's so overwhelming with the edge of it. It's like it bursts apart as soon as it comes out of the sprayer, and it just rushes into your head, and it just kind of overtakes everything around you for a few seconds.
Gasoline.
This is what's blowing my mind about how close it is to Vict, is that Vict is like, it's not like a comforting calm, but the way it like comes out on your skin is literally how it smells. It's like it's not an attack.
No,
and this is, but it's like literally, it's like the same as Vict. I do not understand this.
I do not agree, because this is so white floral to me. Like
that comes later for mine.
After about a good, I would say hour and a half with a generous application, which is what you need from a spray with this. Like, I don't think dabbing from the bell jar is the way to wear this, because then it just fades into the white, creamy gardenia floral, like kind of immediately. But with a big, healthy spray from this Graziel black bottle, it was like lasting and like a gaseous cloud of gasoline all around me. It was making me think of like, in the early days of automobiles, like flappers would wear gasoline as perfume.
Yes.
And it's much like that. But the development of it is so subtle and so masterfully done. And I was like really self-conscious going into work because I had remembered it turning into the white floral like faster. But I was like, oh God, what are people going to say? But everybody who walked in the room was like, what is that wonderful smell? And like this lady was like, what is your cologne? And I wrote it down on a Post-it for her. They all thought it was like this orchids in the lobby that have no smell. It was like, no, it's me. But it's totally like chapter 2 of Poison, because Poison, the inspiration of it is totally Snow White fairy tale. It's evil queen. It's purple. It's in the like poison apple shaped bottle. All of the Dior models, inspired by Lutens, who shot modeling images for Dior. They all looked like the evil queen. This is the next step of that, where it becomes even more avant-garde. And it's so vivid and technicolor. Like this is something that smells really expensive. Like Tubereuse perfumes are not something that can be done on the cheap.
It also smells natural. It doesn't smell like it's made out of chemicals somehow. But all the Serge Lutens I smelled had that quality of being natural.
Right. The 3 main Tubereuse masterpieces that you need if you like this note, to me, are Fracas, Carnal Flower, and Tubereuse Criminelle. And Carnal Flower, like, could not have happened without this. Carnal Flower is a more natural, less hostile and aggressive take on this. It still like has that narcotic, like you feel like winded and faint from spraying it on and can make people really sick from it. It has that quality, but it's more approachable in tone than this. This is just like so evil.
Yeah, Carnal Flower is really laid back compared to this. This has it's friendly,
Which is
it's
weird
relaxed.
to say about Carnal Flower.
Well, Carnal Flower is so cold, but it's cold in a blue kind of way. I guess I think of things in colors a lot, and it's kind of in a cold in a blue kind of way, and this is cold in a flashing red green kind of way to me. It's wild.
Carnal Flower is more like tropical, like
yes.
It has like a beachy sunscreen kind of vibe, which Fracas also does to me. This is totally like interior, inside, like the mothball quality of it is very stuffy, and it's definitely like tuberoses that are in a room with a bunch of mothballs. It's not like the beach and palm trees and stuff.
Yeah, there's nothing. It's not open. There's nothing open about this. It's very. It's gonna take you over. You're in a room with these fumes, and it's gonna cling to your skin, and it does cling to your skin. This stuff does not stop. I wore it. I sprayed some on the other day, and then I had to go to the hospital. And I was at the hospital for hours and hours and hours. And I thought, this stuff is never going to go away, because I was in a tiny little room, and I didn't want to offend anyone that was in there with me. And it was just it just rocked on and on and on.
Right. It was still just like pumping off of me in big Technicolor wafts after my like 8-hour shift, and I could smell nothing else. And forget it if you get it on clothing. It's just that vividness of the coloring in Snow White that will never be done ever again. This perfume has that like translated into a scent for me. Just that vivid colors, brush strokes. This is like one of the most expensive smelling things that I can think of.
So is Giorgio Beverly Hills getting away with what I assume is like a cheaper tuberose aroma chemical by like hiding it in fruit notes? Because this has none of that.
Yeah, Giorgio has that tuberose white floral bouquet that's very chemical and very cheap. And the main like innovation of Giorgio that made it smell new was that chemical. I don't know what it's called, but it's what literally makes the perfume yellow, and it has that like banana, grape,
pineapple,
yeah, like that's what made it like a new thing for the 80s, because nothing had smelled like that. And since it's so identified with that, which I think is like a cheap aroma chemical, like you can do whatever with the florals and it doesn't really matter.
Man, but this one, the weirdness, like I said, the weirdness here is all front loaded. It calms down. I mean, it's still strong and stuff, but it calms down into a very clear, like, floral to me. All this camphor, menthol, foam teeth, mildly peppery stuff. Like, it doesn't stay weird.
No, it doesn't. I don't think it does either.
I used to think that, and I changed my opinion, because after wearing it the other day, I could still just smell the camphor in the background like the whole time. It just, I think it's from generous application, because the first few times I tried it were just from like a dabber bottle, and I thought the same thing. It was like, oh, this turns into a conventional like gardenia thing, but I don't know. I never think of it as conventional. To me, it never moves into conventional. It moves into more comfortable. It becomes a little less in your face and a little less confrontational, because I feel like that first spray, it's really like boom, it's there, and it's all around, and it is confrontational, because you smell like gasoline. You smell right.
Like it's
and that kind of development where it becomes more comfortable as it goes on is like how all old school perfumery used to be. Like now everything is designed to draw people in with the top notes in the store so they leave with it. But then like, you know, everything from the 80s and before had like a shocking opening, like aromatics or opium or poison or something, or Paloma Picasso especially, which I've been wearing a lot of. But it just seems like people knew that you were supposed to like sit with it and just leave it alone. But now now as people spray something on and before it's even dried, they run to Fragrantica and write the review about how it smells like human shit.
Everything smells like shit.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you think that, why do you even engage with this hobby? I just don't get it.
It's just that reflexive negative tone that people adopt because it's lazy and it's easier and safer than saying straightforwardly that you like something or that something is good. Like everybody's just above everything. It's just this like judgmental, critical tone where you have all of these qualifications and then you stay safe. You don't put anything of yourself into that thought. You can't be criticized for being too sincere and having a meltdown and, you know, all of this.
I mean, I don't understand why you can't just say, I like it. It smells fecal and I like it.
Yeah. Why? That's what I say. That's the whole thing. I mean, that the whole like perfume blogging thing that's dead now seemed built around people discovering the idea of animalics and searching out the most shocking stuff and writing about it with this kind of like ambivalent tone, but really they were like just searching for this olfactory pornography. You know,
that's true. I used to read a lot of perfume blogs, so yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It was always like, how skanky can it get? You know, well, it can get pretty skanky, but you're gonna gripe about it a little bit when it does. So, yeah.
I do think that this is like one of the major perfume masterpieces of the 90s. I think that if you like exciting, strange odors, you have to smell this in your lifetime. It's extremely expensive. The spray bottle is about $400 list price, but they will sometimes show up on FragranceNet for $200. And that's when I got this and jumped on it.
I got my bottle off eBay, and I just happened to run across it, and I think somebody was selling it for $175, and it was full. And I was like, heck yeah, I'll spring for that, because it's the most gorgeous bottle. These big monolithic bottles with these like suppressor tops that have this really cool sound when you run your fingertip across them.
Yeah,
and
I just saw them at the mall, and they were quite.
They're so.
Made you want to touch it.
Oh yeah, you want to take, and you want to like. I have, because it's black glass. I can actually have this one sitting out on my chest of drawers, and I'll just walk by as I'm heading into the restroom or something, and I'll just pick it up, take the cap off, and smell it, and then put it back down, just because I like to hold it in my hand. It's perfect. It's just perfect in every way. This packaging, the click, the sound of the way the cap feels under your fingers, you can really grab hold of it and just pull it off. It's such a beautiful, wonderful bottle.
And you can unscrew the atomizer, which is a feature that all perfume bottles should have.
Yes.
I love that you can do that and suck out some decants for people. But yeah, when they release these black spray bottles that remind me of like 20s and 30s, like the scenes of in like George Cukor's The Women, of like Joan Crawford working at that perfume counter. It just feels like something from that era. This ridiculous tall, impossible bottle, Art Deco. It's beautiful, and then it's all the text is black, and it just says Tubereuse Criminelle, like really, really small at the bottom. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah. Do you all get anything fruity from this at all?
No.
Yeah, me neither. That's what I was, because I was also, as I mentioned earlier, comparing it to Giorgio, and I thought it was kind of unique that something like this didn't have any fruit notes in it. There's something in there that's probably just vanilla, but I keep interpreting as buttery, and neither of y'all got anywhere close to that word. I mean, this is all like,
Oh no, Tubereuse is buttery.
Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah,
I get the butter.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's part of the meaty kind of meatiness of it. Is that buttery? That kind of that
fat,
fatty, yeah, fat and fleshy aspect of Tubereuse is kind of buttery. I have a Tubereuse from I can't remember the name of the place. It's a small outfit in LA. I don't even know if they still exist anymore after COVID, but they had a little Tubereuse and it was very buttery, like very buttery. That's the more you smell Tubereuse perfumes, the more you can kind of pick out these little facets of Tubereuse.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Going on down to like the cheapest like drugstore incarnation, which is White Shoulders, which has been around forever, which is kind of like the nicest, cheapest, most matronly and pink kind of incarnation of it. But then it's informative to also smell Givenchy Amarige, which is extremely synthetic, and which I'm a huge fan of. It's one of the ones that people would always flip out about the Luca Turin review because they would like trash it, but also put it on their best perfumes list. And I bought a new bottle of it recently and I was really enjoying it. It smells like Halloween, like fall festival, like 90s mother, like, Patty Chase, My So-Called Life.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. It's beautiful. I wore it in the 90s. I bought it when it first came out. I wore it. I still have my vintage bottle of it. Very synthetic. Yeah, it's very synthetic and it's very strong, which is why I still have my bottle of it. And I wore it all the time. And I don't even think I made it halfway through that bottle because you could just do one spritz. And if you were going to work or something, you didn't want any more than that because you would just be like, it stuck around all day too. And it traveled out and it's huge. And that's why they gave it 1 star, because it's so pervasive and overcoming. You can't, it takes over everything. It takes over your eating. It takes over anything you drink. It takes over the whole experience of your life while you're wearing Amarige.
It's a good perfume for a diet because you can't eat anything.
No, you can't.
Tubereuse has that kind of like sits in your stomach strangely kind of feeling that is very incompatible with food to me. Also, Michael Kors, the original Michael Kors, which they spray the stores with, is a very like synthetic Tubereuse frankincense kind of thing, and I really like that as well. It's they trash it in the guide, but I've smelled it on lots of kind of like Stacy type like bimbo girls, and always think they smell great. But yeah, if you want the most avant-garde, striking watercolor brush kind of cabinet of Dr. Caligari Tubereuse perfume ever, you've got to try this.
Definitely.
All right, leave everything running and let's take our little break and I'll be right back.
Yeah, don't stop a thing.
So you're feeling better now. You finally got to trash that mask and you feel better. Because I was really worried about you.
Oh, I mean, it was bad for the entire year, and it kind of reached a climax at the end because I kind of went crazy from like the CDC officially lifting the ban and then lifting the mask mandate and then the subsequent kind of delay with everyone everywhere, like workplaces and stuff, like not knowing what to do. And after a year of it, I was just like furious when I found out that residents at the condo didn't have to wear it anymore, but we still did. And
Yeah.
yeah, they got mad at me
Wow.
for voicing the most mild kind of
Dissent.
dissent. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's weird how you know, people when they see working people having to do something that they don't have to do, they don't seem to have a problem with it too much.
Oh yeah, I mean it's never occurred to most people that that was really like the way it's enforced, because as we've said over and over again on here, most people like with email jobs would just like think that everything is just a little like choice that you make, a little personal choice that you make, you know.
Oh yeah, I choose to wear this mask so I can keep you safe.
Yeah. Everything is mandated through corporate policy. All of that stuff that you have to do, all of the weird stuff you have to do to like keep your health insurance, all of the like sexual harassment, you know, training things that you have to sit through for any kind of job. It's not just like you choose not to do that.
Right. Oh yeah, I've sat through more than my share of corporate training. So.
So Snow White, I just keep thinking about how cinema had been totally solved by 1939, because we have Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937, and then Gone with the Wind in 1939, Wizard of Oz in 39, The Women in 39, and there have been many great cinema experiments, many great movies since then, but the peak of the art form was very early. And I'm a big fan of Disney through, I would say, Aladdin. Aladdin is kind of where they started getting kind of vulgar and bad with the celebrity sidekicks and everything.
Yeah, we've been going back through some of the, I guess, late the 80s and early 90s Disney's for the little boy, and we still haven't done Aladdin, and neither of us have like jumped on it. And I feel like, I watched Fern Gully recently, and that was the same year as Aladdin, and it had a virtually identical performance from Robin Williams, and it was like annoying.
Right. The loudmouth celebrity sidekick that takes you out of it, which eventually evolved into the like vulgar like fart joke kind of winking at adults type thing, which found its full flower in Shrek, a movie I really hate, which at this point is I think 20 years old. It's not Disney, but like that's that's an example of it. Basically through Beauty and the Beast, they're quite pure and sincere and beautiful, and Beauty and the Beast recaptures a lot of the fairy tale, Baroque fairy tale magic of Snow White to me. But yeah, people like, much like Star Wars, people like trash Disney all the time now, because the thing that currently exists under the name Disney has so little to do with, you know, the interesting Disney of cinema history of the 20th century.
And I understand being frustrated with something that's like so pervasive and ubiquitous in culture that you just have to turn your back on it. Like, I understand that impulse. Sure,
but you know, all it takes is the first 5 seconds of Snow White, and if you are not totally enraptured, then you don't love cinema.
Right. Well, most people, when they think of Snow White now, they think of the plastic marketing of the image. They don't think of the actual animation. They don't think of the actual film. They think of the character and not the film, which is stunningly beautiful.
Because Snow White was like an active feature in people's lives that was re-released every 10 years until 1994. Like, I saw it when they re-released it in 93, and then they released it on video for the first time in 94, and I have like a huge memory of going to Lakeline Mall in Austin right when it opened, and these huge displays of Snow White with this holographic cover on display on video for the first time. And I wonder, like, do people still show their kids Snow White? Or because all I see, like, in the grocery store and like places where I see children are people like with their babies like on the iPads watching those really like primitive YouTube flash animation looking things.
Is the Disney Channel all for grown women?
I think so.
And creepy.
I think so now. Yeah. You have to kind of seek this stuff out. I mean, we have all the classics. We have Sleeping Beauty and Snow White and Alice in Wonderland and what's the other one? The last one? I always forget. Cinderella. We have all of those.
Pocahontas.
Yeah, we have all of those, and I watch those with my kids. And I don't even consider anything made past, I don't know, 1965.
Yeah.
I don't even bother with that.
They do start to get weird. That's like about right. They start to get like diffused, and they lose their focus.
Yeah. They get like that cheap kind of scratchy, almost Hanna-Barbera looking animation, which is why I would watch it, but I never loved like The Sword and the Stone and like Robin Hood and
the scratchiness is something that they specifically avoided in Snow White. But you just mentioned Hanna-Barbera. I've been putting on Flintstones for the little boy just when I'm doing something, and in my mind it was all scratchy and cheap, but like the original like early Flintstone stuff is actually really beautiful and simple. It's kind of like how I'm feeling right now, how Vict is different than my mental memory construction, but I was surprised, just to mention that, I was surprised at how beautiful Flintstones was.
Yeah, Flintstones has those stark, like, thick black lines, whereas as cartoons got cheaper, the Saturday morning stuff started in, like, the 70s, like Scooby-Doo, it's probably still, like, a top-end example of it, but it just started to look cheaper and cheaper. But, yeah, there have been a lot of, like, fallow periods in, like, what I consider the good period of Disney, and from its inception until 1992. And Song of the South is actually one of those, because during the war, during World War II, they made the movies cheaper, and that's why they have all this live action. And so there's a big period after they launched, several successive masterpieces, Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia.
Bambi.
And then they started doing these, like, Make Mine Music, So Dear to My Heart, Saludos Amigos, like all those strange, they're very interesting, but the cheapness had already crept in then. And then Little Mermaid in 89 was like the return to form, where they had an old school fairy tale, lavishly animated blockbuster that like recaptured their reputation as the towering kings of animation. But for those that don't know,
cheap, yeah.
You think what?
Nothing in Snow White looks cheap. It looks like they spared no expense, which is kind of surprising because it seems like they would have taken more cautious steps into feature-length territory. You know what I mean? Like, the fact that they put so much into it and it was the first feature-length cartoon is, in my mind, kind of strange.
Yeah, that's something really unusual about it. And as with Gone with the Wind and Titanic, everyone thought that it was going to be a massive failure. Like, they were laughing at the concept of a feature-length animated film. They thought that people couldn't pay attention to that. The idea of animated realistic human beings was controversial. It was just a completely new territory, and it became very expensive. But the second it premiered, everyone loved it, and they changed their tune. But for those that don't know, this was the first feature-length animated movie. It was also the first movie with a soundtrack album released, and one of the first movies with tons of merchandise released around it. So it was an early pioneering blockbuster in many ways. But yeah, it looks like it's just being painted in front of you as it's happening. It's just so soft and organic and incredible. When I started watching it again in the last 10 years, I went through a real Snow White period where I was watching it all the time and singing it like 5 or 6 years ago. And I was singing all the songs and constantly listening to the songs.
Yeah.
And you don't remember it being quite this stunningly gorgeous, or at least I didn't. I kind of thought that it looked more or less like Cinderella, but it doesn't.
No, it's very detailed. The backgrounds, that they animate over, obviously, they're so beautifully painted.
And they save some taking it to the absolute limit. They save these really expensive looking touches. They don't do too much of it, like the silver reflective water, or seeing the prince and Snow White through the water. There's these small, really expensive, lush touches that they probably for technical reasons, because it was literally expensive and human manpower, but they just saved them and used them just the right amount, which is another thing that really impressed me. Because something like that reflective water, they could have just caned that. They could have just beat it into the ground.
And it's extremely scary. It's one of the scariest movies ever made, I think. This was captured really well in the old Disneyland Disney World Snow White ride, which they've recently censored to make less scary and renamed it. Just so stupid. But yeah, this was so many people's first memory of cinema, and that the absolute exciting terror of seeing the Queen and the witch and the trees and all of that. The intensity of it is just it'll leave such an impression on you.
The part where she's running through the forest and the trees are grabbing her, and there's eyes all around, and then the logs turn into gators and everything's snapping and clawing at her, and it really is very scary, especially if you're in a dark theater. I remember watching it as a child and being pretty scared. Yeah, because I was very young, and when I went to see it in the theater, and it was scary as a child. And then the witch, when she speaks, she speaks into the camera, and she makes there's something about that witch that is so viscerally unsettling.
Yeah. And the gore, the fairy tale gore, I was always transfixed with the idea of bringing her heart back in that box. Which all Grimm's fairy tales and everything were violent in that way. Now there's this bizarre idea that everything old is inappropriately scary for children, and yet ever since Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, all children's movies are 3 hours long and really, really dark with this
yeah.
But people are still can you believe I watched that? It was so fucked up. But this Snow White is also a gay classic. I've spoken to so many gay men whose sexualities and self-images were informed by this in different ways, particularly the different dwarfs living together. And the Queen, obviously John Waters was obsessed with the Queen. I was obsessed with the Queen long before Disney villains were this kind of cottage industry of what they're sadly doing now for aging millennial childless women. my age, they're making these movies like Cruella.
So nobody. You mentioned the dwarves being like a gay interest. You mentioned the Queen. You've left out Snow White.
Because
that's where I would have gone first.
Oh, what do you mean, like her helplessness, or her just being glamorous?
I'm just surprised that you did that it was the dwarves. Like
the dwarves, I think. Even if you don't know you like men, the idea of 7 adult men living and sleeping in these little beds, it does something. Especially all the kind of like the slapstick, you know, they're like have these like S&M relationships, like Doc and Dopey, and you know, one's kind of a retard, which is sort of like a Samuel Delaney trope of there being, and a real life gay trope, because you always see these weird bears with like a retarded younger lover or whatever. But yeah, Snow White, I mean, I was just obsessed with all of the princesses, and I really didn't like Disney movies that didn't have a princess at the center. Like The Lion King was all the rage. That was 94, 95, and like I saw it, I had the merchandise and everything, but the fact that it was like lions seemed so childish and like stupid to me. It was like I want to watch a glamorous woman.
And the music is not as good. It's not.
Yeah, it's trashy. Oh.
Yeah.
Trashy, low class. It's probably, you know, a racist to say Lion King is bad too. That was the Africa one, of course, and for some reason I think that one's trashy. But yeah, it's just I don't know, that opening, the live action book opening, movies should still open like that.
Did you pick up on how many references to Snow White are in Rats and Em? The hands on the book and the words, the pointy nails, like going down below and getting in the boat, like man, there was another one, but there were several things that were directly, basically redone in the Rats and Em that I didn't realize a few weeks ago when we were watching that.
Right, because Secret of NeedsSalt was Don Bluth's like attempt to revive like the Snow White era of animation.
It almost achieves that simple, lush look, like intentional, not simple. It almost achieves the like intentional animation of Snow White, almost.
Yeah, it captures the animation. The story is too complicated and strange for it to succeed in the way that Snow White does. Like Snow White, watching it now, it has the same effect as The Women to me, where I feel like people just seemed infinitely more advanced and sophisticated and intelligent and in 1937 and like where did these women go, where did these people go, and it's all been downhill since there, because all of this like timeless power of myth and everything that this says about human behavior and like women and vanity and selfishness, and you know, you just watch the Queen and you're watching like the current female id.
Yeah, that's what looking in her mirror, that's the chicks log on, they're like, you know, did people like my selfie? Who's
right?
Yeah.
It also go ahead.
No, go.
It also speaks to the benevolence of men. The huntsman spares her. He doesn't take her heart back. The dwarves are all like, it's a girl, and they just dote on her, and
they take her in even though she went in their house
and cleaned it up, and with her, you know, barrage of animals, and she
and they changed their lifestyles.
And she even breaks through Grumpy's. She even cracks through Grumpy's shell there, and he warns her not to let anyone come in. And of course, she's kind of dumb, and she falls for it. But anyway, it speaks to the benevolence of men.
And the difference between inner beauty, which makes one beautiful on the outside as well, and false, hollow exterior beauty. And one of the most like deep down, hard to accept red pills of all, I think, is when you realize that your instincts about people are basically always correct, and everyone who is nice and a good person is beautiful. Like, you can tell, even if they're like not conventionally like good looking in the face, you can just tell from looking at someone who is good and nice instantly that it's a different kind from this like inner sickness. This like, you look at the body positive like obesity activists that are wheeled out for Teen Vogue or whatever, and none of these people are like attractive, like happy fat people that are like cute in the face or seem to have some kind of intelligence. They specifically choose like the subhuman like ones that just look like ogres or like rocks with a face drawn on it in Sharpie, like just undeveloped, like undeveloped brains, with the brain of the scheming tragic mulatto of D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. That's the kind of people you see heralded as quote unquote beautiful right now. But you can tell if someone is beautiful instantly. It shows right on their face. That Roald Dahl physiognomy chart that I think is from The Witches. That is so true. It's eternally true. And people wheel it out now as this like trying to be like, oh, this is anti-Semitic or whatever. No, it's just, that's true.
It doesn't have anything to do with the shape of your nose. It's there's something in the eyes that you can just see and tell. And like it sits in the muscles of their face. Yeah.
And Snow White's exterior beauty comes from her inner beauty. Like, she has these incredible features. Her white skin, her hair is black as coal, lips as red as whatever, I can't remember.
Roses.
Roses. But the difference between that and the evil avant-garde artificial Serge Lutens beauty of the Queen,
who has a willingness to change herself, like morphing
right
into a hag,
code switching,
which I feel is really her true self just coming out. She didn't need all that potion.
And and Snow White is being mean to an ugly, is being nice to an ugly person. That's what you get. That's what, like, good people are just preyed upon incessantly by ugly people. The Snow White's benevolence is what gets her in the glass coffin. But, you know, I'm an optimist, and I believe that good, beautiful people who tell the truth win in the end and are vindicated in the end. So someday your prince will come if things seem hard right now.
And the ugly witch will fall into a hole and be followed down by vultures.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen to everyone. That's going to happen to all the liberals who will be poured like ants into that. What's that thing happening in the ocean? Something exploded, and there's
some pipeline burst and is on fire under the sea or something. It's like a hell mouth. It looks great. It looks amazing, but yeah.
Yeah, just imagine liberals being dumped in there like Night on Bald Mountain, the pig beasties, just out of a giant cup or something, like little ants. So, had any of y'all seen Coal Black and Sebben Dwarfs before?
No.
What did you think of it?
I thought it was good. I had to watch it several times. Some of the gags are like with all those. There's all those forbidden Warner Brothers cartoons or Merry Melodies or whatever, and some of the gags are like real specific for that time. So I feel like I missed some things. I don't. Ugh. I'm gonna try to have it both ways. I don't honestly understand why is Elmer? Why am I not supposed to be offended by Elmer Fudd or Dopey, whereas this is offensive?
Yeah, that's because you have to reject the entire hypothesis, and the concept of what is genuinely offensive is constantly changing, and it's fake, because this, which is from 1943, it's a Merry Melodies, Warner Brothers Looney Tunes cartoon. It was an early experiment in diversity. This was progressive.
With all of the forbidden Merry Melodies, they obviously respect, it's all about hot jazz and swing and stuff like that, which is treated respectful. They obviously love the music. It's not like they make fun of jazz. There's one in particular that's a tribute to famous jazz figures. It has Louis Armstrong and all these people, rendered as cartoons, and it's offensive, but it's obviously a tribute.
Well, it's like every Warner or Merry Melodies. It's zany. It's madcap. I mean, you've got they throw the humor in there where it's. I mean, they did the same thing to Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
Is he super attractive in those Merry Melodies? No, he looks. I mean, it's not. It's not there to make you look realistic. You're supposed to be entertaining and overblown and fun. It's supposed to be, engaging. And really and truly, this is just pro-war propaganda. I mean,
it's like a crazy urban jazz tribute, jingoistic pro-war cartoon from World War II. But I was struck when I first watched this probably 10 years ago. I had always read about it and Song of the South and, all the kind of banned for race stuff, cartoons, as if they're these evil things with racist intent, intended to humiliate and mock black people. And what this actually is a tribute to black music and black artistry. What has changed is the way, the trappings and the framing of how you're allowed to appreciate black people.
Yeah.
I was also struck by how timeless and how modern this seemed, because guess what? Everyone still loves rap. Everyone still loves gangster rap. You're supposed to appreciate the same tropes that are contained here in just the context of rap, which you will hear heralded on NPR by liberals and stuff. There's grills, there's pimp clothing, there's hot big booty bitches.
Yep.
There's
no, it's not hot. Those are exaggerated features to make fun of her.
But they're not.
They're not.
No, she looks hot. I hate to say that about a cartoon.
She looks
dangerous
really
territory. But
I had a weird synchronicity with this one, and with heavy traffic, and I'll tell you about that when we get to that. But I was wondering, I was like, okay, I get that it's the kind of short skirt from Hell's a Poppin', I get that the whatever, the Lindy, whatever. And I was like, okay, so what about her hair? And not I watched this, and then the next day I was watching this show that's on Prime, and it's American Vintage, and they showed this clip of these two people dancing at the Savoy, and her hair was exactly like Snow White's hair in Coal Black and the Seven Dwarfs, exactly, and it was the exact same kind of outfit except without the patch on the butt of the skirt, and I was like, wow,
yeah,
blew my mind. So I'm like, no, they didn't take this and they didn't try to stereotype her. You know, she looks like somebody, she looks like a dancer at the Savoy. But literally
show me the difference in appreciating this and appreciating a Nicki Minaj song from the last 10 years. There's no difference.
The power relations.
You're supposed to, even though it's the exact same thing, and was actually made with black artists, black musicians, black voice actors, and Bob Clampett made it because he was like talking to either a theater troupe or like a jazz band or something, and they asked why there were no black people in cartoons, and he made this, and everyone loved it. It was like it was a critical favorite. It was very like forward thinking in the way that Fritz the Cat and Heavy Traffic were in the early 70s. But the strange thing is that this was quote unquote canceled or withdrawn way earlier than Song of the South. This was withdrawn from circulation in 1968.
Oh yeah, along with all there's like 11 cartoons that they took out of circulation. Mm-hmm. And some of them are more understandable than others. But then I just keep thinking about how all the Looney Tunes characters are treated exactly the same. Like, I'm really not supposed... I'm not supposed to look at Elmer Fudd and be like, this guy's a straight-up retard with a speech impediment.
Well,
yeah.
People are stuck in this like post-woke liberalism trap where it's so strange they can't depict black people as having any of the features that they actually have. So if there's like a cartoon with black people, they'll like just make the lips really thin in order to avoid accusations of blackface. But at the same time, there's this white liberal obsession with natural hair, which does not carry over to actual black people. Because like I watched a basically all black movie the other day. All the women had weaves. All the women had straight hair. But then movies made for white liberals, the trope of the FHM that we talk about with the advertising girl clasping the mug, the mixed race girl with the frizzy natural hair that you never see in real life. That's like all for the pleasure of white audiences at this specific moment in time. So this just shows how it all makes no sense. Like the stigma around this particularly is ludicrous because like, yeah, some of the other like Merry Melodies cartoons where they would just like have the Hiawatha Indian or, you know, there would just be a stereotype that walked on screen, which I also have no problem with because stereotypes are all true.
There's literally one that replaces Elmer Fudd with a black character. Like it's the same Bugs Bunny Elmer Fudd routine, but it's just a silly black guy, and that's one of the ones that was withdrawn. And that one, I'm just like, but why is it's the power relations?
But that's.
There's no power relations in this one at all. Everybody in it, every single character in it is black. It's a black lady telling a story to a black little girl.
The guy's counting the money.
It's always, okay, let's see, with literally every kind of cultural advancement since the beginning of history, seems like it's been white men doing it, and then other people... women, other minorities suddenly taking credit for it at some point and being given these like artificial politically correct like directorial authority roles like we see now. This is the case with the perception of Joel Chandler Harris as well, because people who don't know anything about Uncle Remus, they have this idea that is a depiction of idyllic happy slaves with like totally racist intent. Like there's a different kind of there's a mindset that went into that that's so antiquated that it's impossible to explain the racial dynamics to people now. But that was progressive then, to both Northerners and Southerners. Yeah. That was something that had never been done, is putting African folklore into a book. And that was like the first time that aspect of Black culture had been recorded by someone. But there are all these problems of authorship and appropriation now, this artificial concept of appropriation, because mysteriously white men seem to have all the good ideas of recording things and for future generations and everything. So you just get into this ridiculous territory where everything, according to liberals, art is supposed to be just this pure vision of one person who is only allowed to talk about their own race. That's not how it happens. That's not how anything good happens.
You can't pull anything from anywhere else. It has to be like taught, which is ridiculous. It's mind-blowingly ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's like saying, if you're Anglo, you can only use anything that came directly from England. And then you can't use that because according to, 50 gazillion people online, the English don't have their own culture and never have, which is, again, ridiculous. Because everything is ridiculous now. Because apparently, white people don't exist even.
Yeah, white people don't exist, and there's also simultaneously responsible for all crimes throughout history, specifically just white Americans. Like Europeans I don't even think actual legit German Nazis have the same emotional impact on liberals as anymore as this stereotype, this mythical archetype of the vulgar, fat, flyover state MAGA white American who goes to Applebee's unironically and votes Republican. That's the entire history of racism is attributable to that archetype, according to liberals. And I'm not exaggerating at all. That's what they really think is the case. And cultural appropriation was the first big wave of 2010's woke liberalism. That was the first thing before Me Too, before the revived campus rape, sex panic, all of this. The concept of cultural appropriation was rolled out in an endless series of Salon, Jezebel, Gawker, New York Times articles. And the message was basically that if you're white, you're not allowed to enjoy anything or kind of cross-pollinate in a multicultural way as had been natural and accepted at every point in history up until 2012. And this was only a punishment for white people who had created nothing. And the case that they make is that white people are stealing work and money from the cultures that they are borrowing from. So the white girl who wears the Indian headdress war bonnet at Coachella, which was the constant image that they would freak out about in 2013. It was white people wearing Indian headdresses. It was just the biggest thing in the news, the biggest problem in the entire world. But even that concept of you're stealing work from them is ludicrous. It's this fantasy. And it's not based, liberals can't judge intent whatsoever. We've had this escalating, increasing inability to understand the concept of intent, which, first, the N-word was forbidden if said in a bad way. And obviously people can, with intent to call someone that. And obviously anybody can tell what context you're using it in. And over 10 years, this has evolved into constant moral panics over white people reading the word in a book or something, that is seen as the sin, it's a magical spell. It's magical thinking.
It literally kills black people.
And liberalism is literally a religion. Yeah. I was thinking about it's a religion based on worshiping mythical, imaginary black people. And with little spells and incantations and rituals and everything. And this is why I don't really see liberals denying the existence of God anymore in the kind of like atheist way that they used to, because they worship black people and they all know.
Yeah. No, that happened last year. They replaced their atheism with a new religion, and now it's all George Floyd. He is the God. Yeah. He is the martyr. He is the. I honest to goodness think that's what that was all about.
Yes.
They buried him in a gold coffin.
Woo.
Okay.
Wow. Just like Snow White in the glass coffin.
I'm just saying, there's a reason that happened.
So if you place Song of the South alongside Cold Black and Die Sebben Dwarfs, I can understand. I know it may be coming from the perspective of programming. I can understand how someone would feel made fun of by Cold Black and Die Sebben Dwarfs. I can understand that. Next to Song of the South, whereas with Song of the South next to Cold Black, I don't understand why Song of the South is forbidden. Do you see what I'm saying here?
I see exactly what you're saying. The Song of the South which is from 1946. Is an interesting case because when I first saw it, I rented it from Vulcan Video long ago. It's never been put out on video by Disney. I think it's the only of the classic Disney animated movies that has not been put out in the US. It was released in Europe and Japan in the 90s, and I think even the early 2000s. But I
think some of the wartime cartoons with Japs in them have been released on DVD. Yeah, so it's...
Yeah, they have. But when I finally watched it, and it occupied this place of myth because the inaccurate perception of it that people give you is that it's making fun of black people and, it's cruel and racist and hearkening back to just directly saying that slavery was better for everyone. And there's an element of that in Joel Chandler Harris's work. Okay, that's the sort of like
fondly recalling
the pre-Civil War antebellum era is considered to be romanticizing and like saying that slavery was better.
But there are people who did fondly recall that time, like legitimately in the historical record. There are people who fondly recall living behind the Iron Curtain and in the Soviet Union and stuff like that.
Right. But the product that you see here, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Legitimately, even the Tar Baby, the Warner Brothers cartoons, I could understand a case. I enjoy them. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with them because it's a cartoon, but I get it. It's literally just because it takes place in the South and involves black people. Like, there's no content. One moment.
There's one dog whistle moment, to use the current phraseology, dog whistle moment that's winking to the Southern audience. And that's when Uncle Remus starts telling this story, and he says, a long time ago, where the relations between the critters and the blah, blah, blah were better. And according to me, I think it was a little better. And that's like the winking Pepe moment,
But that's like when people say when men were men and women were women.
That's true and like good. I'm not saying I believe all of this. I'm trying to like put the like framework of understanding this, which seems impossible now because the Civil War totally and absolutely devastated the South for decades. Like Reconstruction was a brutal period, and there was like for a long time basically no hope of the United States being reunited because of the animosity. The North really like tortured and devastated the South for a long, long period of time. And they rightfully hated Yankees. All of that hatred of Yankees, I transfer my modern hatred of liberals onto that, because this meddling in people's lives, and this constant, you're being told that you're evil. You're being told that your memories aren't real, that your life is illegitimate. All of this, that nothing about you is real, that you need to be socially engineered and changed. And your whole family has maybe died. All the male family members have died. You're living in poverty. There's crime everywhere. Everything's shitty. And then you're being socially engineered and told that this is actually good.
Yeah. And you have no political outlet, because the machine is built against you. Yeah.
People would understand, as I always say, if they read Gone with the Wind, which depicts Reconstruction in such detail. And it's, I think most modern people kind of have this little slideshow idea of the Civil War, where there were bad people on one side who wanted slavery, and then there were good people in the North. And then it was solved when they defeated the bad people. And the only residual like racism and whatever was like Southern people until about 1968. And then it all changed. Like there's a long period of time between that. So early efforts to reunite the United States, a lot of intellectuals and writers did something of the South, did something called kind of like Lost Cause. Okay, like this is all stigmatized now, but like Lost Cause, the Lost Cause view of the Civil War, the view of the New South. Like these are people who romanticize the antebellum period, and they romanticize slavery, and usually thought that there was a natural racial order that was better in the past, but they still saw that they could no longer go back to that. And the only way forward was to reconcile the races and reunite the country. And so this romantic vision of the South lasted for a long time. And stuff like Uncle Remus became popular in the North as well, and, made them culturally interested in the South. So it had this kind of like cross-pollinating, uniting effect that nobody would understand now, because all they would see is Southerners were still allowed to think that slavery was better.
I mean, it is idealized in Song of the South. It's like, oh, they're singing and they're going to the field, and there's, and it's very picturesque, because it's a Disney movie.
But who's to say that isn't real? In one song, they say that they're afraid of the world and that they need to it would be safer to stay at home. And there's only one way to read that.
And you know what? That might have been the case in a lot of places. I don't know. I wasn't there. So I can't say for certain. We have historical accounts to go by for some things. And, I get it. And I also kind of understand, I think there's also this kind of thought that Uncle Remus is still somehow in service to these white people, even if he's just telling this little boy some stories. It's like they don't want to perpetuate that black people should just naturally fall in line and be in service to white people. I get that sentiment, but all in all, that's not what this movie's about.
No,
that's not this movie. There is a lot of that. There is Joel Chandler Harris is not Thomas Dixon, the author of The Klansman, which was adapted into Birth of a Nation. Like Thomas Dixon, who was extremely popular, was genuinely violently racist. And if you watch Birth of a Nation, you see this. But Joel Chandler Harris was this strange, iconoclastic, funny intellectual of the South. Mm-hmm. He was not this diehard, racial he was kind of like a hippie type guy. He was the like pre-jazz, pre-beatnik, like his interest in writing down black dialect for the first time and recording black stories for the first time was very strange for what is it, like 18, can't find the year, but when 1880 or something, whenever the first Uncle Remus story came out. And he was a huge fan of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, which now you always see only talked about as just a screed against slavery, which was its intent, but he liked it as an illustration of how slavery was better in this weird way. Like, and he had this strange interpretation of it. But like, he was not like this. He was not a classic like Southern gentleman type. He was like an illegitimate child. He had red hair. He was Irish. He heard all of these like slave stories from living on a plantation and going and hanging out with the slaves at the time. But like the universe of Uncle Remus was very different from fairy tales, like individual self-contained tales, because it like continued. It was like a kind of expansive universe. It was very novel, and people were really into that. It was extensively merchandised, popular everywhere. He was just very beloved. But yeah, you would at a glance just think that he's this like race scientist, straight-laced race scientist. It's like, no, he was like a weird Southern hippie.
He was a recorder. He was a recorder of things that he knew would, you know, would pass away. Those dialects pass away. Those stories would have passed away. You know.
Yeah, and it became an academic trend in, I think, the 80s to write little like papers about how actually he had nothing to do with, you know, recording these stories. It was all just purely black people. But no, he did. Like this excising of like the inventiveness of white men from every narrative is so ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Or to say that, you know, because they had a novel idea, a creative idea, but they were a white man, that it's inherently bad or serve no purpose is ridiculous. Like you, Orton, always talk about on the Hulu, HBO, like streaming shows or whatever, if it's about a historical event, then they just turn a male character into a woman character that didn't exist.
Yeah, you can always guess. Like, basically, with almost 100% accuracy, you can easily figure out which character is made up. If there's like a magic woman scientist who like provides the missing path forward.
They did that with the Halston miniseries recently, which I haven't watched yet.
They wrote out Bernard.
They wrote out Bernard Shant,
the master himself,
and changed him into a woman.
Oh my God!
How is that okay? Okay, the whole. This is where you have to pull back and realize that you have to reject the entire hypothesis and the entire framing of everything, because how are white men not supposed to be mad about being deliberately written out of history?
Power relations. It's all fairness. See, we like every day is Children's Day. Like children need to give up, you know. It's not time for Children's Day anymore.
Yep. If not for white men, we would be living in grass huts and no one would have the luxury of taking credit for white men's inventiveness and writing fake female characters into everything. But yeah, this movie is so innocuous and so sweet.
The worst part, the part that was apparently excised in the 70s and 80s, the tar baby. Like even when they used to show this, I swear I saw it in theaters because I have seen it. Yeah.
They released it in 86.
But I had to have been like 4 years. How can I remember? It doesn't make sense. But I saw this in theaters. But the Tar Baby isn't... I don't get it. Like, I get how the Warner Brothers cartoons could be offensive. I don't understand the Tar
Baby has zero to do with anybody's skin color. Zero to do. And, I mean, the only interpretation of that I can possibly come up with is Brer Rabbit is coming along and he thinks this thing sitting there actually looks like a black person.
He's been saying hello to animals all day.
Yes, he is an anthropomorphized rabbit. How are you going to look at that and think, yes, he thinks that's a black child?
Well, because Brer Rabbit himself is pretty clearly black.
They're all black. They all have black voices. It's just like Coal Black and the Seven Dwarfs. Like, that was the most surprising thing to me when watching this for the first time, was just how black their voices were.
Yeah.
For like a Disney movie, it was very, you know.
But physically on the outside.
Yeah, he's just a rabbit. Like,
he's a rabbit.
And if he was, and if he was any other Disney character, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's just a rabbit. But since we're in this special territory, I'm trying to not be like deliberately contrarian, or I just don't understand what's wrong with the Tar Baby. Is there something about Tar Babies that we don't know? Like,
I don't even see the Tar Baby as the major point of why liberals and academics object to this. It's merely stereotypes, because the whole idea of stereotypes that liberals propagate is that they are all completely made up by nefarious white people, and there's no grain of truth to any of it. And so they train you to think that if you see a stereotype, then it's inaccurate and bad and wrong, which if you live on Earth for more than 2 seconds, you quickly realize that stereotypes are all rooted in truth. And that's how they become stereotypes. It's a natural way for the human brain to catalog different people and experiences. But the mere fact of Uncle Remus being a jolly, laughing ex-slave who speaks in dialect and tells funny stories is the point of contention here.
It's as if to say that somehow this film is going to trick people into thinking that all black men are just exactly like that.
But everything that art that black people make is full of stereotypes. That's the ridiculous.
My wife was watching Rush Hour, the Rush Hour series. Is that the one with Jackie Chan and what's his name? Anyway, but that whole series was basically like just racism, just laughing at people's skin and stereotypes about their culture. And I realized their power differential, it's obvious. But I was just like, that whole movie is just racist. That's the point of that movie.
And that's all like black stand-up comedy. That's all black comedy. That's everything. I'm trying to think of an example of like perfectly socially engineered, like stereotype-free black culture. And it's like the This Is America video, the worst thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
And like Beyonce, the Beyonce 2010 stuff where it's like her like dressed as like a slave in a turban on like a car that's sinking in Hurricane Katrina. Just totally artificial and totally made for white audiences anyway, you know? It's like, but, you know, the popularity of this movie was such that its last theatrical release was in 1986, and Splash Mountain did not open until 1989.
That's crazy. And the Zippity Doo-Dah, is that still celebrated as a Disney song, or have they? Because that's sure a big song. That's like
in the 90s, it was on all of those Disney sing-along tapes.
Yeah. It's a huge and there's all sorts of cover versions of it. Like, it's like a big standard. I just wonder if they've gotten rid of Zippity Doo-Dah because it's, this.
And I always wondered, because of the moral panic about this movie, how Splash Mountain had continued to exist and had been grandfathered in, because the main, most loathsome quality of Disney as it currently exists is the willingness to memory hole and erase their entire history. And they were like forerunners of that, like, which is common practice now for everything, as every time there's a new liberal moral panic, we see episodes of TV shows removed from streaming willy-nilly, regardless of intent, and nothing is complete anymore. Everything is censored and partial.
Having gay pride days at Disneyland.
And you have to be a weird, kooky, bad, Republican, conservative, nationalist freak like us in order to have an interest in history and the preservation of art. It seems. But yeah, I was surprised at how long Splash Mountain lasted with those characters, and they finally changed it to the Princess and the Frog last year during George Floyd, and when they revealed that racism was the real virus during the COVID
They changed
pandemic.
it to the Princess and the Frog.
Which, that's not even that new. I'm surprised that...
It's like 20 years old, yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised that even meets the current standards. But... yeah, this is a cute movie. You can still buy great, high-quality bootleg DVDs of it in Savannah, Georgia, at various bookstores and stuff. That's where I got mine. It even has, like, extras and a really nice copy I'm glad to have. But is it a masterpiece? No, because it has it's mostly live action. That's the strange thing, because it's like it was done for like budget reasons, and so the majority of it is this strange live action story of a little boy who, by the way, is played by Bobby Driscoll, who was the subject of Robert Crumb's strange brother Charles in Crumb. He reveals that he's like sexually obsessed with that boy.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's that boy.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That
you can't
dough-faced
tell he's a
little boy.
boy for like the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, that's true. I thought it was a little girl the whole
Same
time.
here.
Until he started, you know, they call him whatever his name is. I can't even remember his name. He's such a non-entity in that movie.
Yeah. So but also like the white people are depicted as like stodgy and stuck up, and they're the antagonists of the movie.
Yeah,
like the mother constantly meddling, like Uncle Remus is innocent. There's
The
no
hero.
big like
He's like completely the hero and like taking care of the kid.
yeah, he shows them how to solve problems by telling them stories. He when the mother thinks he's done something wrong, he's innocent. And he's entirely the hero of this. There's no kind of like moment where it's revealed that the boy is being polluted by hearing these like strange black stories. No, Uncle Remus is like right the whole time.
And the mother's just meddling and overprotective, and you know, and then and the father just leaves.
Well, it's a story about how you know, if you get divorced, your kid's going to end up playing weird video games and like listening to weird stories and watching weird TV.
One of them zippity doodah days.
Yep.
Man,
He's gonna get influenced.
What a great
he's gonna
song.
get
I love that when that transition when he starts telling the stories and he does the one a winking Pepe moment about how the old times used to be better, and then suddenly whoop, the animation comes on and he sings zippity doodah. Like, what a great moment.
But the winking Pepe moment you refer to includes relations like beasts had their proper place in the universe, which I get, is that talking about like farming or so? Like what?
No, that's talking about slavery. It's saying that there's a racial hierarchy. And yeah.
Well, you know.
So it's not accurate to like just come and like defend Song of the South by saying it's totally innocent and not racist and it's all a mistake, because that doesn't understand the whole massive context of how something like this was perceived. And
well, let's put it like this too. There's also white trash in this movie
that want to drown dogs.
That want to drown dogs. Yeah, the poor little puppy Pinchy. They want to take it. The little boys, the little red-haired white boys, want to take the dog and drown it. And it's
And
like,
no one is allowed to play with the white trash.
no.
Whether you're black or white, you're not allowed to associate with the white trash.
But white trash is real, and they're the problem, and they're the entire source of all of the problems since the beginning of time, according to liberals now. So there's no problem accurately depicting white trash, you see. So heavy traffic. So it should be said that Ralph Bakshi made a movie called Coonskin that's literally like an Uncle Remus like blaxploitation adaptation. It's good, but I like it less than Heavy Traffic. Heavy Traffic blew me away when I first saw it. I had seen Fritz the Cat in high school, and thought it was really excellent and scary. And the like go-to hipster opinion on the Fritz the Cat movie was that at that time was that it was bad because Robert Crumb didn't like it. And this is totally stupid because it's better than Robert Crumb's Fritz the Cat, because Robert Crumb didn't like it because it made fun of leftists and he's a big liberal. And all of Fritz the Cat is making fun of hippies and making fun of the counterculture in really cruel ways. It was the first animated movie with an X rating. It was a big success. Heavy Traffic, also rated X, but was a pseudo-autobiographical project that Bakshi made about his own upbringing in New York as half Jewish, half Italian, about an underground comic. And this is like one of the most ambitious out there animated movies I've ever seen. It's like the techniques of it, the psychedelic visuals, the strange pornographic tone of it with tits constantly popping out everywhere. Yeah, the use of blurry like real photos as backdrops. The central kind of sweet interracial romance. It's all very rich, all very interesting to me. So I was obsessed with this for a while. What did y'all think of it?
I'd never seen it before. I'd seen Fritz the Cat, but it was years ago, and I honestly don't remember much about it because I think I've only seen it once. And so it comes on, and it has this. I love the opening sequence with the pinball and that bossa nova Scarborough Fair.
Yes, that you going to Scarborough Fair? Yeah, that like easy listening Scarborough Fair that plays through the whole thing.
Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Yes, I love it so much. It's so. I mean, I was like, okay, I'm hooked. I'm hooked into this. Whatever it is, I'm going to be hooked into it. And I mean, I was trying to work and watch it at the same time. And finally, I just stopped that. And I was like, you know what? I just need to set this to the side until I can actually focus on it, because there's so much I wanted to see in the background.
I did the same thing.
And because it's something you have to watch. You have to engage with it. Absolutely, totally, visually. And I really liked it. I love the you can tell that he brought people in to kind of ad lib and the voices and the accents and it's really great. It's really special. And again, it's another another record of I feel like a place and time. It's, it's not just, oh, here's a story. It's outside of it's outside of things. It's certainly a story of a place and time of, some of, decay and, people having some problems. And even though it's mostly his fantasy in the movie,
it's really, really disturbing and genuinely dark, but it has this sweet, happy ending that I quite like. But yeah, it's so the kind of overall like psychosexual Freudian incestuous stuff where like his terrifying, overbearing Jewish mother. Her like tit is constantly popping out and
constantly
bringing those big trays of food. And when she's first introduced, and she just looks like a lizard and has those like red eyes.
What occurred to me is like the violence in this film. It's the violence is very fluid. It feels like nothing ever has. When things connect, you don't feel like there's tension in the violence. But every single time a boob pops out, you feel like the springiness of that, that flesh. It's really...
like the Paul Verhoeven trope. Every Paul Verhoeven movie has women's shirts being torn off so their tits do a particular kind of bounce out of the top.
Yeah.
It's an incel movie.
Right.
Instead of playing video games, he actually does something productive, which becomes, a career or whatever in the real world.
Yeah, he would have just been trans on Twitter now.
Yeah, he would have just been playing video games, messing around on the internet, whereas in the 70s, you'd be playing guitar or drawing or reading or something.
Yeah, now he would have hated his father because he's Catholic.
Like the main narrative influence for this is Hubert Selby's Last Exit to Brooklyn, which is also full of all this like Italian union drama like this. That stuff is always really inscrutable to me.
How long had The Godfather been out when this is like from 73? The Godfather was the previous year, is that correct?
Yeah.
It seems like a tribute to The Godfather. I mean, his name is Michael Corleone.
It has the Last Exit to Brooklyn tragic drag queen too. Snowflake. Those scenes are great.
Wants to be beaten, yeah.
Constantly fetishistically beaten up and likes it and goes after rough trade, and just the depiction of the repulsive like hairy legs, and Snowflake's voice is especially good. The kind of mincing. Like, this is a movie that is so effective and could only exist with the use of stereotypes. Like, everything that's so powerful about this is because he leans so hard into racial and gender and sexual stereotypes.
And even okay, so there's that, and this says something about how like the boomers were more in touch with the thousands of years of human history than us faggots are today, is that he could make a movie that's all about stereotypes and race and all this stuff that's like really honest about that, and then in the middle of it have an absolutely repulsive hippie 70s little comic strip about God getting shot.
Oh yeah.
Like, do you see like the juxtaposition? Like that part is like really 70s. Like he literally goes to the establishment, to the dying old man, to like pitch his story.
His little Reddit story,
yeah, and it's got that like kind of just there's a like that sort of hippie humor that, you know, like, oh man, you really got God there with your story, bud. But then at the same time, it can be like they were still connected to the actual universe.
Right. Now, people who consider themselves artists that are our age are just not connected to any kind of reality and are totally trained to make the most neutral, milquetoast, safe product imaginable because they are too stupid to realize the structures that the ideological structures that they're the victim of. That is the reason why art is bad now. And I see a lot of people who are kind of like quasi recently red-pilled trying out these takes of like, I'm avoiding politics, I'm not going to say anything political. I understand ignoring the news and ignoring specific political soap opera policy stuff, but you can't speak accurately about art or history or what's happening in the present day without explicitly naming the influence of 2010s liberalism on censorship and the overall leveling out and blandness of everything around us. That's the reason. There is not another reason. It's liberalism. It's not both sides.
Yeah, and if you
that's
notice
why things are
that
bad
about the modern culture, if you notice that, like, you've basically already chosen your side, even if you don't know it,
and you can't go back.
Yeah, you like, even if you say I haven't chosen a side, you already have. Even like, another way to say it could have been chosen, like, your side could have been chosen for you by other people, but just because you think you're not on a side, like, you're straight up lying to yourself.
Saying you're a socialist doesn't save you.
No.
Like, none of that saves you. You're on the bad side and you can't go back. They'll never take you back. No. And you might as well talk honestly about what's happening. So I get really frustrated when I see that, where people have the big realization of something is drastically wrong and has been for a long time, and then they get piled on online for the first time, and then they're like, I'm not doing politics anymore. No, you're doing politics by merely talking about anything.
Ooh.
The personal is political.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah, which it's true. It's true. But yeah, that the boomer killing God atheist thing in the middle of this, it almost like is like hidden because there's so much going on. It's like an inscrutable boomer emotion to me. Like, in the 70s, they were all mad about being Catholic, as opposed to now, where in our circles, you can't criticize anything about Catholicism at all. They were all mad about being Catholic, like John Waters.
Yeah, but the leftists, like the Twitter left, they hate Catholics. Like, somebody was actually like cheering on the Catholic churches burning in Canada, and just really gross. Yeah, no, they hate Catholicism.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
it's just boomers were in that sweet spot where they were, as you said, Orton, connected to the past and seemed to have some grasp on reality, because there was still enough of a structure around them, supporting them and allowing them to experiment with their minds and politics and everything. But now it's just, everyone just cheers on the total erasure of the entirety of art and history, and so people have nothing. Their minds are just empty, and that's the intent. That's the intent of liberalism, is that you're just a goldfish that remembers nothing.
There were still boomers who, like, used an outhouse or remember when a telephone was installed in their town, or like, they still had a connection. That, like, it's gone. That's all gone. We're so divorced from reality that our whole heavy traffic would be literally that God comic. Like, there would be nothing else.
Yeah.
I love the lonely kind of Catcher in the Rye, wandering around gritty, ugly, dark, early 70s New York in a pea coat, feeling he looks like Axl Rose facially.
My question is, I don't know anything about film stocks and stuff, but
from that movie theater,
or like at the end when it becomes all live action, if you took that exact camera and that film stock and filmed today, would it look the same, or is it like a choice of costumes, the colors of what they're wearing? Like, there's this like texture to the world that I can't tell if it's film or not. I see pictures of the 80s that I remember, I remember the 80s, and like the world did look like that. I don't know, that film stock at the end, just the...
Yeah, it's... The live action portion is really cute.
Where they have their little pantomime fight. Because I don't feel like they're actually saying words. It's like they're having this argument, and I feel like it's all just... it's all just pantomime. They're not... Like, there's no words there. There's no actual verbalizations. It's just arms swinging around and big motions.
the relentless Scarborough Fair.
Yeah.
Just pumping through the whole movie.
And obviously Matt Groening got, like, these are, several of these characters straight up look like 70s Simpsons.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I mean, all adult animation derived from Ralph Bakshi.
Yeah, that's pretty clear.
And it's weird to think that that concept was still controversial enough in the early 90s that, like, parents were just perpetually mad about The Simpsons in a way that no one could understand now.
Yeah,
they were more mad about The Simpsons than Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
Which Ren and Stimpy is like the genuinely creepy one. Simpsons is so innocent, but their parents were just like, you're not watching that.
That's absolutely incredible.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, you go ahead. I have nothing to say.
That scene, well, maybe you know, because I was trying to look this up, but I got distracted by something else. When he's sitting in the movie theater and he's watching that clip of that film, and do you know what film that is?
That it's Jean Harlow and Clark Gable.
Yeah.
I don't know what specific movie it is.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's an amazing scene. And the way, like, the expressions that flit across his face, you know, with such simple lines. The animation, I mean, it's very simple, but you feel what he's feeling, and even with as simple as it is, and it's like a very confounding moment. It feels like for him when they pan back, and that theater's all broken down and just falling to pieces, and you could tell it used to be opulent. Like every place they go used to be. There's a big feeling of used to be about all the settings. You know, you really get a feel of like decay and.
Oh yeah, New York City was apparently really, really.
Oh
really
yeah.
bad back then.
It was just bombed out. Yeah, it was just empty buildings until the 90s, and that scene of him in the empty old movie palace, that kind of lonely wandering around New York, Catcher in the Rye feeling was what so like obsessed me as a teenager. Just the idea of being able to go to like a 24-hour movie house and just sit there to see like porn in a theater and stuff. All of this like doesn't exist anymore. But that what has weirdly a similar feeling to this to me is a boy named Charlie Brown.
Sadness.
It has that melancholy
cast. Yeah.
It has those scenes of him like wandering around, I think looking for Snoopy, wandering around like the sketchy city at night. That's kind of a feeling of this.
We should be much more. I realize there's a lot to complain about with boomers, but just look at the juxtaposition of the God story and then the actual film that's contained in. Like, we could not do that. Like, we're such massive pussies compared to them. And this kind of, like, exemplifies that.
Right. And the, Dirtbag Left seems to currently be floating around the idea that the 60s are terrible and responsible. Because it's easy.
There's truth to it. And with hindsight, we can walk through and be like, they did this, they were given this, blah, blah, blah. And the implication is always that you would have done better, just like with no true socialism has ever been tried. The implication being that if you were if you were the dictator, you could implement, because you're a good person. The implication is always you could do better than. I don't think. Like, what an interesting creature to be able to be both rooted in the world as it is and express that, and also, like, transgress in what is now, to me, like a gross way. Like, that's.
Right. Totally. And, they had no idea how bad things we're going to get. I see just this like constant sourness and like
but that's their
blame assigned
to
boomers. I didn't know. I couldn't foresee how bad and how barren and how awful things were going to be even 10 years ago. You think as you're living in a moment that it's all of the kind of stuff that you take for granted is just always going to be there. Like I could have never foreseen a time like now where the average young person, like a teenager, has no impulse whatsoever to rebel from any kind of like mainstream culture. It's all of this kind of like inward crazy gender stuff that's totally encouraged by the mass culture. There's no,
and I keep seeing families out and about, and the teens are the one with the mask on.
Oh yeah.
What is that about? Have you seen that? Have you seen that, NeedsSalt?
Usually if I see a teen with a mask and they're with an adult, the adult also has a mask. I do see teens with the mask just on their own, and I'm always like, what are you doing?
I see kids walking, well, the school's over, but walking together, and there's like a teens?
I would imagine that they see it as a status symbol, like a class symbol of, like in the way that the Daily Show and like having a subscription to the New York Times was for like precocious liberal kids in the 2000s when I was in high school. I would think that they think that wearing the masks makes them a higher sort of person.
I would see when I used to pick my daughter up at school, I would see, she's in middle school. I would see those middle schoolers standing out there, and probably 50% of them would be wearing a mask, even though they're not standing very close together, And I would always be like, why? Why? You're outside. Why are you kids wearing this mask? I would ask my daughter, and, in the wintertime, she was like, well, it keeps my face warm. And I'm like, okay, fine. And then she did. She stopped wearing it when spring came around. But, I was like, are they making you wear that? And she's like, no. I'm like, why are you doing it? Don't do that. Like, literally, I'm like, don't do it. The only time I've worn a mask is when I had to go to the hospital the other day. I will wear a mask inside a hospital. That's it. That's it. I mean, I can't, but yeah, they do. And I think you're right, Jack. I think it's because it's like a signifier of some greater intelligence, That's what it boils down to. It's like, oh, well, the smart people get vaccinated. The smart people wear a mask. The smart people jab their children with these experimental gene therapies. The smart, and you see that play out. You see it play out on Twitter. Definitely, with these libs being like, oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I know my nephew died, but you should totally get your kid vaccine. What? I can't wrap my head around it. But yeah, I think it is a signifier, and and you're right. I couldn't have seen us here at any time in my past. But you can't blame the boomers because they weren't always in control. They weren't. I mean, the culture comes from the youth. That's where and just because it was exploited by boomers to make money and, via marketing, well, that's really not their fault. They're just making money. And then, Gen X came along and they made money. And then, millennials came along and they really made money. Yeah.
I think my overall feeling here regarding these movies is just that people need to pull back and develop a broader perspective and understand that the history of recorded events is this constantly changing thing. You can't look at particular elements of culture and generations and people and just write them off in these like reductive terms, like everyone was thinking the same thing about this and it meant the same thing to people that it does now. You should investigate and explore for yourself. But the way, like, the last year is such a vivid illustration of how social engineering and like rewriting of history and gaslighting and all of this works, where the population is basically just like the brains are beaten into a mush because we've been so abused by the media and by politicians, and just constant lies, and then being told that you're evil and you're dangerous and you have to be taken out if you have any curiosity about history, or if you even tell people what you remember happening in your own life and observed with your own two eyes, especially during the last election. And if you don't understand that liberalism is a demonic, satanic force that seeks to erase everything you have ever known and loved, at this point, there is no hope for you. There's one side. There's not both sides. But yeah, that's my feeling about this. It just makes me so angry to hear someone who's like 24 years old to look at something like Song of the South, this like well-made, sweet, artistic movie that was beloved by people for generations, and all they know is the little received Wikipedia soundbite of it's bad and it meant something bad to bad people and it should go away. That's not the truth.
That's not having a zippity-doo-dah day.
Zippity-doo-dah, zippity. Well, thank you so much, NeedsSalt. That was a delight as always.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
All right. Have a great evening.
You too.
Happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence. Oh yeah, today is the anniversary of Joel Chandler Harris's death. He died on July 3rd.
Really?
Oh.
Uh-huh.
May he rest in peace.
R.I.P. Bye.
All right, y'all.